So that was my first awakening. Both Ashok and I began to suspect that something strange was going on. Here's this girl all dressed up coming late at night. Fast forward to I, through a number of circumstances, joined Maharishi's international staff shortly after the last teacher training course was held on a small scale at Estes Park in Colorado. And that was right near my Boulder campus. I had gone to visit Maharishi several times in Estes Park. And at the conclusion of the course, he asked me to join the international staff and help with training of teachers, which of course was wonderful for me. I was only too happy to join him. And at that time, my friend, newly made friend, Casey Coleman, told me he wanted to become a brahmachari. And I thought, if you're going to be serious about the path, that's the way to go, because I was influenced by reading Yogananda's book and by my now burgeoning knowledge of Indian philosophy and Indian practice. So I joined the international staff, and the first course went well. The second course began. And on that course was a very lovely young girl from Oregon, of whom I was considerably enamored myself. She was a lovely young lady. And as I said, I'm a Scorpio. I like the gals. I'd like to see so many of you ladies on here. This is good. Soon after the course began, Maharishi asked her to help him with his personal mail, which he did for a number of afternoons with her. And then one night he asked me to go and get her after the close of business, and nobody was else around. I went to get her in her room, and she was now all dolled up in a sari and makeup and gold jewelry. And when I looked at her coming to do the mail late at night, I flashed back to Rishikesh and Maharishi inviting Judith to come read him some poems every night after everyone had gone to bed. So this kicked off my distant early warning system about what is going on here with Maharishi. After, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks, Judith appeared on the scene. And at the time, about the time Judith came, I was, by this time, very good friends with a woman named April Clements. April was just a wonderful person. She became like my older sister. We were very, very close. And she somehow found out that Maharishi had been sleeping with Judith. And when April found this out, she went to Judith and confronted her. Is, in fact, it the case? Are you really actually sleeping with Maharishi? And Judith sort of hung her head in embarrassment to confessionally. And once April learned that it was true that Maharishi was sleeping with Judith, I then brought up to her the fact that something suspicious appeared to be going on with Belinda. Here was the replication of the wearing of the saris, the made-up excuse for why she would be appearing after hours. And April then went directly to Belinda to confront her, who also confessed that she was in a sexual relationship with Maharishi at that time. Well, April was one to poke the bear. She went right back to Judith and told her that there were 2 of them on the course. And that led to Belinda going directly to Judith. The 2 of them compared stories. And now April, Judith, and Belinda all knew what was going on. And just to blow things up, April then went to Maharishi and told him that both of his paramours were now aware of what he was up to, and that the reckoning was at hand. The next morning, first thing, Maharishi called me in. He told me to go to Belinda's room and bring her back to his room. I went to her room. There was no answer. I tried the door. She was gone. As it turned out, April and Belinda had secretly planned an escape for Belinda. April took her to the airport in Palma, and Belinda flew to Salisbury. And when Maharishi learned that Salisbury was Belinda's destination, he put a call into Fran and Beverly, the girls who were running the international center there, and told them to call him immediately upon Belinda's arrival. So she did arrive. Maharishi and Belinda connected by phone, and when the phone call went through, he told me to leave the room and wait outside the door. And for an hour and a half, I sat there outside Maharishi's door, listening to him plead, beg, and cajole Belinda to come back. And I sat there and thought to myself, this does not sound like the behavior of a man in unity consciousness. This sounds like the behavior of a lovesick teenager who wants to have his girlfriend back. Well, that night, April and I went for a long walk on the beach, and she told me the truth about Belinda and Judith, which I had been suspecting, but now she knew, and I learned about this truth. And the result was the four of us were eventually to leave the movement in our own time and in our own way. But that was the final moment of truth for all of us. Here was the undeniable fact that Maharishi, who claimed to be a Bal Brahmachari, I've seen his passport. Right on there where it says profession, it says Bal Brahmachari, which means a lifetime celibate. And when the drama went down in India, when Mia Farrow and then later Rosalind Bonus, another American girl, both accused him of sexual predation with respect to the two of them. When that happened, Charlie Lutz, who was then the head of the spiritual regeneration movement, one of the oldest, solidest rocks in the movement, he went directly to Maharishi and confronted him with Mia and Rosalind's allegations. And Maharishi looked him in the eye and said, Charlie, I know nothing of sexual desire. So that's my very short story, which I could expand upon with many details. But here's the takeaway, folks. First of all, as I mentioned, I'm a Scorpio. I love the ladies. I have taken vows of celibacy to a man I believe to embody every human perfection, to be in touch with the non-dual nature of Brahman, to have transcended all lust and greed, and to be guided by nature to act perfectly in every situation and circumstance. And once I learned that he was a sexual predator and a hypocrite, the illusion was shattered, and I eventually did leave the movement. Fortunately, I found my salvation during this period of turmoil when I read a biography of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And when I read some of his quotations, I thought, my God, this is Advaita Vedanta from Concord, Massachusetts. And that became my fascination, my passion, my intellectual grail was to learn how this beautiful wisdom arose in the shores of America before anyone had ever heard the words karma and guru and all of the other words that are yoga that are now familiar to millions and millions of people around the world. So that's my short story. Brian is kindly, he and Gary have put up my detailed account of what I have just summarized for you. And I think the details are really telling. At this point, I'd also like to thank personally Judith for coming forward. For Jessie, who told a very interesting story. It seemed innocent on the surface, but somehow she deep inside knew this was threatening. This was leading to something else, something she did not want to be a part of. And finally, I really want to thank Teresa Olson, because folks, this is really the bottom. This is really the nadir of everything that we are discussing in this moment right now. I want you just to fix firmly in your mind this idea that a man supposedly in Brahman consciousness, dependent upon the Olsons for his very food and shelter, dependent upon them for spreading his movement, would attempt to seduce their teenage daughter in their own home when they were 10 feet away on the other side of the wall. So what I have to say adds to that what Judith has to say, what Susan Shumsky has to say, what Linda Williams has to say, what the other 15 girls that Susan Shumsky has told you about have to say. All of that pales in comparison to this deeply ugly violation of the basic, simplest canons of human behavior. You do not try to fuck the teenage daughter of your benefactors in their own home. So anyone who cares to doubt the validity of what everyone else has to say can put that in their pipe and smoke it. Now, I'd like to direct a remark directly to Karen.
Carmen, perhaps.
Carmen, I'm sorry, directly to Carmen. Carmen basically said to me after I had spoken on the Hive, creating the tape, which Brian and Gary have made available to you, she rather blasted me for hurting her feelings and expressing her outrage that I would dare to question Maharishi. Who am I to question Maharishi, who is in Brahman consciousness? Well, Carmen, you know who I am? I am a thinking, reason-endowed human being who is very clear on what the norms of human behavior should be. And from that perspective, I and everyone else on this Zoom feed and everyone else in the universe has the right to question any other person's behavior. And the assumption that Maharishi is unquestionable because he is enlightened is simply false. Because the fact of the matter is, you don't know if he's enlightened. I don't know if he's enlightened. Nobody knows if he's enlightened or was enlightened, except perhaps for himself. And I think he knew what I now know, based upon my own rational judgment, that he was not enlightened. Because a person who would engage in this despicable behavior cannot be a person that anyone would want to emulate. If that's enlightenment, I don't want it. If it turns you into a greedy, money-grubbing, sexual predator, enlightenment is worthless as far as I'm concerned. Because in American transcendentalism, the fundamental principle in that whole philosophy is, first of all, every person their own church. You are on an open road of spiritual development that is going to unfold in a magical way, unique to you, so you have got to find your own pathway. And the most important thing that you can do on that pathway is treat every other person with dignity and respect. And in my own personal life, I have only one commandment. In my spirituality, there is only one thing you must observe, and that is this: bring all possible light, joy, and happiness to every sentient being you encounter every moment of every day. That's my little speech, folks. I'm open to punches or plaudits or whatever you want to throw my way. I come out of the scrum of academic life, and I've eaten my Wheaties. I'm ready.
Well, thanks so much, Rob. And that was succinct but very powerful, and appreciated by all, I think. Just to explain to everybody what we're trying to do here, this whole thing is of Maharishi's behavior, nighttime behavior, we might say, has come upon us as something of a surprise. We've been working, as you know, for the last 2 years to try and reform the TM movement, dealing with issues of finance and behavior and accountability and progress and success, and addressing the weaknesses of the Raja system and so on. So I'm sure that Carmen would like to respond to Rob. So perhaps if you wish, Carmen, you could respond, and then we'll take other questions.
So we have, and Radha is his name, is not compared to the Maharishi, of course, but we have all respect for knowledge he brings to us. And after that, after many years, I was on TPC on with 33 participants, and it was all because of this Radha. Okay, you understand me?
Yes. Perhaps I can summarize Carmen, you're saying that imperfect people brought TM to Croatia, and
Yes.
I think perhaps you're going to go on and compare that to Maharshi and say Maharshi brought TM to the world despite being imperfect, and that therefore we shouldn't give too much emphasis to Maharshi's, whatever we see as Maharshi's imperfections. Would that be a summary of where you're going?
Yes. Also, I see here that it was the clash of cultures. What happened? You know that on East, I have prepared. On East, you have India and other East nations have no this opinion about sex like on the West, on Christianity.
Excuse me,
And-
Carmen, let me intercede here a moment. There is no known spiritual tradition known to me in India that would countenance a guru trying to sleep with the daughter of his primary supporters. No Indian tradition I know of outside of Tantra. And even in Tantra, which does use sexuality as a means of spiritual development, they would never countenance bringing a woman into a sexual relationship without her full knowledge of what is going on. So I'm just going to stop you there. This is not a clash of cultures. It is wrong in Catholicism for Catholic priests to seduce their parishioners or children. It's wrong in Buddhism. It's wrong in Hinduism. It's wrong everywhere. You just don't do it. The other thing is, I don't know of any spiritual tradition that countenances lying and hypocrisy. I don't know of any spiritual tradition, aside from some get-rich Christian sects in America, that thinks you should go out and grab all the money you can get. These are just basic moral failings. So I just want to stop that train before it goes further down the tracks. There's no clash of cultures here. It's wrong in every culture. And the question I want to ask you, and that I think is the important point of everything that is going on here, we want to warn people that are innocent of the fact that this is wrong in all cultures everywhere, that if your master starts trying to get into your pants, something's not okay. And you should flee as fast as you can. So partly what we're trying to do is prevent the replication of this and avoid building Maharishi into something that he was not. What he was a wonderful exponent of the technique of transcendental meditation. And what we know now from Dana Sawyer's research, who went to all the Rishikesh, all the swamis in India that are teaching meditation, what we know from his research is that Maharishi's TM was basically what you would have learned from Guru Dev or any of the other Shankaracharyas in India. And for that, tip of the old chapeau. I respect him for that. I'm grateful that he brought the practice of TM. But the tragedy is he ruined the movement. As Brian said eloquently at the beginning, it's dying, it's disappearing. And why is it disappearing? Because it's rotten at the core. Because instead of investing in TM centers where people actually could learn and flourish and develop and come to, all the money's just disappeared. Gone where? No one knows. And not only was he sleeping with women, but he was convincing other people that they should be celibate as well. And Purusha started and Mother Divine. So it's rotten to the core. And I personally hope that TM actually could flourish and be taught. People like Miguel and Brian and Delana and the other good-hearted folks that are trying to, as Brian put it, coax the phoenix out of the ashes, feel that the stables need to be cleaned before you want to bring the new horses into the barn. And that's what I think is going on here. So what do you think, Karen? Do you think all these women are lying? Do you think the pain and Judith telling how she has felt ashamed her whole life, Teresa explaining how because she rebuffed Maharishi's advances, he treated her like dirt for the rest of her life. Do you think that's all okay? How do you excuse that? Do you think they're all lying? What do you think in their heart when you hear Teresa's story? Do you think she's lying? Do you think the damage he did to her is okay?
Delana Thomas from Hawaii.
Jesse shared something with us the other day from this book on Guru Dev's teachings. It's a translation of some of his lectures. And I just wanted to share from teaching number 22. If a person is of good character, then listen to him. If you follow the words of a characterless person, it only serves to magnify your own lack of character. Save yourself from such deceitful people and save innocent, pious people from them.
The other thing, I look in all your faces and I see what wonderful, good, kind-hearted, spiritually committed people were drawn to this movement with the best of possible intentions. And what breaks my heart is that what could now be a flourishing, vigorous, worldwide movement was derailed from the original project, which was to teach transcendental meditation. And instead, it got off the rails and became a way to turn the most devoted people into cash cows. I'm figuring, well, this is a story that should be told because there are other people that might be in this situation with some future girl, and they're going to think back to that article they read in Rolling Stone from that guy about what these gurus might be up to, and they'll be saved from going down the same path. Because I can tell you, I know ladies who have been down this path, and it has damaged them for their life, for their whole life. And one of the professors directly down the hall from me at the University of Oregon, her specialty happened to be sexual trauma, and particularly sexual trauma inflicted by a trusted person. But if you are violated by a person that you have basically given your soul to, you have committed your whole life to them. You're willing to give them $215 million. You're willing to go on the road for 50 years and do whatever Maharishi asks you to do. When you are violated by that person, the consequences are, someone used the phrase stain on my soul. Well, I like that, says it all.
I and some others, we didn't take Judith's book seriously, to our shame, when it came out 13 years ago. And we obviously didn't take any notice of the Mia Farrow stories when we learned to meditate, because we thought, oh, that's just showbiz stuff. And then, but suddenly, more recently, we saw this list of letters from the deerskin carriers, this thread that some of you might have seen, and then Rob's paper became available, and then we heard Teresa Olson's testimony, and suddenly we felt that this, for us, this was enough evidence, given what else we knew, what else we'd seen of Maharishi. This was enough evidence, and we were convinced. And that is why we started on this path of releasing this evidence as we're doing now and discussing it. But there, you know, the TMO, the Empire, as we jokingly refer to it, and many other people whose first reaction is naturally one of denial and shock, they will ask for more evidence and more evidence. And there is more evidence. Every piece of evidence is a step towards the truth. And once the truth is known, then we can get on with creating, you know, a new direction, getting the phoenix to rise from the ashes. Because as somebody's already said, the TMO is collapsing of its own weight. It doesn't need help from us because the Raja system is such an absurdity. They won't even publish their own statistics because in almost every country, they're teaching virtually nobody. Let's go to Phil, who's an expert in the field.
Well, to some extent, I guess. Just from what I've learned and seen in my own research, I just wanted to encourage, first of all, tell people the more this gets out, you should know what to expect. People are going to be defensive. People are going to be combative. People are going to be in a state of disbelief. They're going to be in a state of shock. And it's going to be painful for many of the TM people who have stayed with it all these years and have had Maharishi on a pedestal for most of their lives. And so you have to expect that. And there's going to be backlash. And how it's handled will determine to a large extent whether the long-term goals Brian has articulated will be successful. And my only thought is that those of us who are standing up for the truth stand up for the whole truth, which would also mean to give Maharishi the credit that is due him for all he accomplished and all he's done for so many people's lives, and to own that as well as exposing the dark side. I think that will be very helpful. And to also treat the people who are going to be shocked and upset and blame the messengers. They deserve our empathy and compassion as well, because I think it would be a good idea to take the high road and understand that this is what is going to happen. It always does. There's an extreme range of reaction. And you're going to get a lot of flack if you speak out, and as Rob well knows.
Well, one thing I want to add is no one is more positive about transcendental meditation than I am. I know it works. I initiated many people. I had magical stages of development as a result of it that were all directly a consequence of my practicing TM. And many of the hours I spent with Maharishi were totally joy-filled. not only with him, but Jemima Pittman and all these wonderful people that I was so blessed to have been introduced to. And when I went to Princeton, I came from UC Santa Barbara, and you know, they're all really snooty. If you didn't come from Yale or Harvard, that's the California guy. My first published paper was about Maharishi and TM. And when that came back, the people at Princeton had to say, okay, well, maybe this guy's got the chops, you know? So I'm totally grateful to Maharishi for all of these blessings that have rained down on me directly as a result of him. And there's nothing I would like to see more than the report for Australia and New Zealand and America and Austria and Serbia comes in. By the way, Serbia, go Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, take down the Heat. I hate to get in an NBA basketball. I'm really big for the Heat. I'm a Denver boy. There's nothing I'd like to see better than an uncorrupt TM movement initiating 20 million people every month around the world. And I have no doubt that if that happened, the world would be a far better place. So I have so much, and people, Casey Coleman, Ned Wynn, all these people dear to me. I know them. Mike Love, my wife, all of them have come through TM. So I'm 100% positive for it. What I'm angry about is that Maharishi, by being this corrupt, hypocritical, greedy person, basically drove a stake into the heart of what could now be a movement on a par with, say, the Mormon Church. If it was as big as the Mormon Church, I'd say that's real success. And instead, what do we find? It's slowly evanescing, and it will soon disappear, except for a small coterie of people living in flow drop, feeding off the carcass of the remains until all the dough runs out. So I'm 100% positive about TM. And I can think back to many moments with Maharishi that broke that filled my heart. This is a simple thing. Madam Kaivani, the best pistachio nuts in the world come from Iran. A lot of other bad stuff comes from Iran, but pistachio nuts they have down. And she would send Maharishi the fresh pistachio nuts. And I remember he got a new jar and then he held it out. Oh, Rob, take some for the pocket. And, you know, that touched me. But Delana, you mentioned Angelica. I've also seen his horribly cruel side. And so I'd really like to see the TM movement flourish. I would like to see this movement to free it from the corruption, to achieve financial transparency, to punish reprobate leaders that prey upon the followers of the movement, to see them punished and to see the whole thing really flourish, because I know TM works. There's Angelica. There she is. Look at that face, people. Look at that beautiful girl. She was Maharishi's first female brahmachari, Angelica von Killishorn. She was a wealthy, beautiful, wonderful girl. We had so many talks about her hopes. And then, I don't know this is true, but I think Maharishi tried to seduce her. I don't know this, but suddenly she went from being totally enthusiastic to like she was withdrawing, and Then I remember one day, but she was still around. She was still close. She was still a brahmacharini. And then one day, Maharishi was going somewhere, and Angelica came from and was traditional. He would always take some water right before he left the room, covered in the silver cup. And Angelica brought him the cup as he was going out the door, and he took a drink of it, and he spit it in her face, and he threw the cup on the floor and asked someone else to bring him water, like she was such a tainted, evil person that she contaminated his water. And she ended up in an insane asylum. That's Angelica's story. I got to take a little break here, folks, just for a minute.
We really extend our thanks to you for being so brave with coming out with your paper. And I know that you came out years ago with your with making clear your position on all these matters. And so thanks so much. Thanks for your great talk, and thanks for your great talk 2 weeks ago as well. Much appreciated. I think everybody can be silently clapping.
Thanks to all of you.